This is the Brazoria County Minute. And now the host of the Brazoria County Minute, Christen English.
Hi, I'm Christen English with eXp Realty, and I'm at the Alden B. Dow Museum in downtown Lake Jackson today. And my guest is Brad Summers. He is a local mortgage expert with CMG Home Loans. Brad, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First off, thank you so much for inviting me on here. It means a lot. I've got the opportunity to watch a lot of your videos, and they're all awesome. So I'm Brad Summers. I was born and raised here in Danbury. Grew up here in Brazoria County. At the age of 18, I joined the military. Spent a lot of times working for the Air Force, about 18 years total. In that time frame, I married a girl from Danbury. We had 2 kids. And now I'm back. In the last, 10 years, I've really gotten into real estate. I've had my real estate license. I've had my home inspector license, my insurance adjuster license, and my loan originator license. So it's
You're well diversified in real estate.
I am. I think so. I like to learn. I like to take tests.
And you've also done some real estate investing.
I have. We bought our first house in 2002. And I think it's 22 or 25 houses I've either owned or had a partnership in the last few years. So in the last 20 something years.
Yeah,
so
that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
We have conversations about real estate, and a topic that comes up a lot as an agent is buying houses throughout the generations. Like, what does that look like? So for example, when I have someone who's in the baby boomer generation sell a house, they will sometimes wonder why their first-time home buyers only putting 3.5% down when they had to put 20% down. Right. How come they are asking me for concessions to pay for closing? Why can they not come up with that themselves? They don't understand those types of things because they maybe haven't bought a house in a very long time. So it looks very differently. And so, I wanted to have you here today. You have some good information to share, and we can just kind of go through what that looks like and just put out some good information for those who hadn't really thought about what that looks like for the different generations.
Right. In today's climate, in today's market, a lot of people are paying attention to the differences. What we've had is we've had a period of time with low interest rates, but high cost. And it's funny because the boomer generation, they had low cost and high interest rates. So it's completely flipped. And so you're hearing a lot of this generational chatter, I like to call it.
Yeah.
They're talking between each other, and one's saying, hey, it's unfair because now houses are unaffordable and I can't afford them because they cost so much. And then the other generation's like, well, you weren't paying 18% interest. You were getting 3 or 2% interest. And then you have the Gen Xers who are just kind of hanging out in the middle who got an opportunity to buy at a decent interest rate at a decent price. So let's start off kind of like with the boomer generation. The boomers, they kind of started buying houses in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. At that point in time, the cost of homes were fairly low. But the other thing that I don't think people realize is the average home square footage, first-time home buyer, was 1,500 and change square foot. Mm-hmm. So they were smaller houses. Whereas in today's world, it's more like the average first-time home buyer is buying a 2,700 square foot home, and so they're buying a lot more home, even though they're paying more.
Right.
So you have to play that in. But the boomers, they were able to buy houses. But the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is the boomers, they were in a position to where they had to put a lot of percent down.
Right.
Granted, there were some programs out there for low down payment, but banks really weren't offering. Like, the banks weren't ready to take on the full risk like they're doing now.
Yeah.
Even with a 30-year mortgage. Most of them, and I had the opportunity to sit down with my parents who I bought their first house in 1980. Most of them, I think 79, they had a high interest rate, but they had to save up 10% down. And in today's world, the millennials and the Gen Xers, most of them didn't put more than 5% down.
Right.
A lot of them were getting the FHA 3.5%, especially on their first time, or conventional with the 3% since they're first time home buyers. So you just they didn't have to save up that money. The other thing is
a lot of people buying houses now for their first time don't even know that they can put 3.5% down. They still have their parents or grandparents thinking that it's 20% down, and they're freaking out because they're like, I'm never going to be able to get 20% down. Because what's 20% of like $200,000? That's a lot of money.
That's $40,000. Yeah. And I smile only because there's so much information out there that says you don't have to put 20% down. And this is something I run into a lot. I have to put this much down, or I have to do this. The reality is no, you don't. Are there benefits to putting 20% down?
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. There's definitely, you're going to get a better interest rate. You're going to miss PMI and different things like that. But if you sit down and look at the numbers on the interest rate and the PMI versus the equity that you would earn over that years it took you to save that 20%, you're going to earn a lot more in the equity. So it makes more sense just to go ahead and buy at a low down payment and build that equity in your home, over the next 5 years that it might have taken you to save the 20%.
Right.
So waiting to save the 20% or the 10% isn't always a good idea.
Well, yeah. In the meantime, the price of houses is just going up.
Yeah, the price of houses.
Yeah, and I've had buyers, experience that where they tell me, I really want to save up a bigger down payment. Okay. And then after a year or two, they call me back and they're like, I'm saving and saving and saving, but the houses I like keep getting more expensive. Right. So I don't know what to do. Maybe I'm just going to go ahead and go for it, Yeah, right.
I think the average increase is like 3 to 5% a year. And so we'll say on the low end, 3%, you're trying to save up, $10,000 in 2 years. Well, that house just went up $6,000. Right. So you're really now you've got to save up 16 or not even 16, but to make up the difference.
Right.
Whereas if you would have bought earlier, now you're building equity.
Exactly.
And it just matters. So you don't have to put that down. We do have down payment assistance programs, which you can get in a house for no money down. Again, there's some stipulations. It's not always the best choice for everyone, but it's there and it's available.
Well, it can sometimes make your interest rate higher, right?
Your interest rate could be higher. A lot of times it comes with a second loan that's forgivable, which means you don't ever have to make a payment on that loan. But
when you sell your house,
if you sell your house, you're going to have to pay it off. If you refinance to a lower interest rate, you're going to have to pay that second loan off. And so you just have to be aware of that.
Right.
And that loan's typically 3 to 5 years. So it's not the length, the 30-year of the mortgage, but that second loan is only 3 to 5 years. So if you keep the property for, we'll say 5 years, worst case scenario, and you don't do anything with it, that loan's completely forgiven and you're good to go and you'll never have to worry about that loan again.
But a lot of first-time home buyers
don't.
They stay 2, 3.
They stay 2 or 3 or 4 years. Again, that's one of the big cultural differences between and I'm going to use the boomers and the millennials. I'm going to leave Gen X out. Gen X is doing their own thing. They missed it. The extremes are the boomers and the millennials. Whereas the millennials, they get new cars every 2 years. They get new phones every year. They upgrade everything. Everything is an upgrade constantly. They're going to upgrade their house. Right. No matter how many times you sit down with a first-time home buyer and be like, look, buy a starter home, buy something well within your means. Go ahead and buy one now. And they say, no, I want to wait and buy my forever home. And then they buy their forever home. And you as a realtor are going in 3 to 5 years, they're calling you because they're making more money, and they're able to afford more of a home and they're able to do this. And even though they thought that was going to be their forever home, that's just not how they're wired. Whereas the boomers, my parents stayed in their first house, I think 13 years. And the only reason they decided to get into a newer house is because they went from 0 children to 5 children. Yeah, we were 5 kids living in a 3-2 home, right? I really think it was either 11 or 1,200 square foot home. So there was a family of 7.
Right. It gets crowded quick.
It gets real quick. There was 4 boys in one room. We had double bunk beds. And so the only reason my parents moved, they built their next home, was for more space.
Right.
If they didn't need the more space, they would have gladly stayed in the house that they purchased because culturally that's who they are. And I think most of the boomers have stayed in a house for an extended period of time.
Right. They've paid their home off and now they're living mortgage free.
They're living mortgage free and they're comfortable with that, where the Gen Xers and the millennials are constantly upgrading because that's just culturally how they were raised, and that's just where they're at. So with that, you have to think about that if you're going to do a down payment assistance program. But the thing is, okay, so the down payment assistance program pays for 4%, 3.5%, or whatever it is, it pays for. You have the house for 3 years. It increases in value 3% every year. You're still coming out ahead.
Right. You're still going to make money. You're still going to create equity.
You're still going to create equity. You're still coming out ahead, minus fees of selling and things like that. And that's always different for every situation. And so you kind of have to calculate that. Whereas if you're renting,
nothing.
Nothing.
You walk away with nothing.
You walk away with nothing.
You probably aren't even getting your deposit back.
You typically walk away with either losing your deposit or paying some damages fees. So you walk away with nothing. So that's the other thing. Circle back to just home ownership, and the value of home ownership is you're going to pay the cost of shelter no matter what, unless you're living with your mom and dad or a family, or you're living somewhere very cheap.
Right.
The cost of shelter is the cost of shelter. And you've got to pay.
Because everybody needs a place to live.
Everybody needs a place to live. And me personally, I'd rather be earning equity in my cost of shelter than not.
Right.
The other kind of cultural difference that I found, I think has a play in the homeownership, and I kind of touched base on the family aspect, is that the boomers got married a lot younger.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when you get married, you have this almost obligation to transition into a home.
It's like the next step.
It's just the next step. It's just the process. We're just kind of wired that way. It goes, okay, we're married. Now we need to start a home.
Right.
Not a house, a home. And we want to own that home because that's how we were raised and that's how we do it. So the millennials and the Gen Xers, they're getting married, 10 years later. And so they're not so quickly to do that. As a single individual, there are single people who buy houses, which right now, I think single women are beating single men as far as home ownership.
What do you think that is?
I think it's women sometimes are more stable than men. Men are more comfortable being a little unstable, living kind of on the fringe. Women...
if women crave stability, then they're going to want to create their own.
They're
if
going
they
to create their own
else to do it for them.
If they don't have somebody else to do it, so they're
sense.
creating them. Whereas a man's perfectly okay with living kind of.
Yeah, so
he
if he
can live in his
doesn't have anyone
garage
to create stability for, then
if he doesn't have to create the stability, he doesn't.
That makes
he doesn't
sense.
have to have it. Just my opinion. I don't know if that's true or not.
It sounds
legit. From my experience, I found that men are just more comfortable moving around, being in an apartment, more comfortable. They seem to travel more. They seem to do things more. They're outside of the house more. And so their thought process, the home is not important as it is.
That's true.
As for the woman.
Yeah.
So they don't need it. They just need a place to sleep. So.
Yeah, it's just some interesting things to observe and kind of think about, especially if you're at a family gathering and people are talking about things and, grandpa says, well, you can't buy a house. You need 20% down. And then,
Well, and then you have, the millennial getting mad at the Gen Xer because the Gen Xer got 3%.
Right.
And he's like, you can't talk because you got a house for 3%.
Yeah.
And I got to pay 7%. And then you have.
It's not fair.
You have grandpa come in.
I don't make very much money.
Yeah. And I don't make as much money. And then you have grandpa come in and he goes, 6%'s nothing. I paid 18.
Yes. I've been present for these conversations.
These are legit conversations,
Yes.
and these are valid conversations. But then you gotta dial that back. Is it just the percentage, the interest rate? No. Is it just the cost of the home? No. Is it the size of the home? No. It's all these different factors.
Right.
Multiple incomes, all these different things that play into it. Is it expensive to own a home? Sure. 100% it's expensive to own a home. Is it worth it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It is. I can't stress enough that owning a home will change the way you frame yourself. I've said this and I'll continue to say it. You just frame yourself better. It's scientifically proven that people that own homes are more successful. It's scientifically proven that they're happier. And it just overall, they're in a better standpoint, more stable standpoint than it is somebody that doesn't own their home. So these conversations are fun as long as they're fun.
Yeah.
When they no longer become fun, when they become aggressive, then they're not fun. And then you end up trying to like prove a point.
Yeah.
And the reality is that the point shouldn't really be proven because
Yeah.
we can't change the past.
Right.
And we have no idea what the future. All we can do is focus on what's happening today. And today, how do we purchase a home? What are the tools that we have available to us to purchase a home?
Yeah, because we don't know what the future real estate looks like. I mean, we can make some guesses based off of the past.
Right.
But they're just guesses. And now we have a whole new generation coming into the home buying market. I have recently had a lot of Gen Z messaging me, I'm going to want to buy a house in the next, couple of years.
Right.
I'm establishing my career or just thinking about the future. And I want to know, what do I need to do? How do I need to start getting ready? What does that look like? And so what is it going to look like for them? We don't know,
No.
So but there's a whole new generation coming in.
There is. And they're a different generation too. They're culturally different also. They grew up with these TikTok videos, these very short educational videos, and that have good information, but doesn't have all the information.
Right. So it's like highlights.
It's these highlights. So they have this highlight education.
Right.
And all these grand goals. And then you're like, well, yeah, you can do that. That loan is available, or that product is available, or you can buy a house like that. But you got to have all this too, and you didn't know about all this,
right?
But they're excited about it, and they're watching it.
Yeah.
So that's I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see.
I'm actually happy to see them excited about it. It makes me feel good to have these people who are they're 20, 21 years old reaching out to me, thinking about their future, thinking about making that type of investment.
Right.
I'm glad to see that is still something that young people think about.
One thing I've noticed, and maybe you can clarify this. I travel the state of Texas when it comes to my job as far as home inspections or loans, and I pay attention to all of them. I'm starting to see builders build communities of smaller homes, and that we didn't see probably 5 to 10 years ago or 8 years ago. Like these 1,100 square foot homes, these single car garage type homes, or no garage type homes, these more affordable type homes. I'm really excited about that because I think we need that with the price of home or the price of square footage going up so high. We need some homes that are more affordable for those Gen Z.
Well, yeah. So actually, it's for multiple generations. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up because I recently toured an area like that, a little subdivision like that that's being built locally. And I asked the builder's rep, I said, who is your buyers? Who comes here? And he was telling me that it's anywhere from first time home buyers, single women, and also retirees who want to downsize.
No single men though.
He didn't specifically say that.
Yeah,
we're out living
in apartments and RVs.
I'm sure there were some, but so he said, that they intentionally make very small yards, so they can go out, they can cut the grass very easily. It's very affordable. They were in the 200s, and brand new houses, great floor plans,
right?
And then small little lots.
Yep.
And they're selling.
Personally, I'm super excited about it.
I think it's a good option. I really do.
I think it's a smart option, and I think we've gotten to the point where these mini mansions, these massive 5,000 plus square foot homes that these single families are living in are just I get it, I understand it, but the average person's not going to be able to get in.
Yeah, you don't need that much space.
You don't need that much space, and then for me, being a single man, maintenance, I don't want to maintain that much space. I want to maintain a pool. I don't want to maintain a yard. I don't want to spend my Saturday mowing, right? I want to spend my Saturday out.
And that's a good option for people who are in that space. Right. I actually toured it for a gentleman that was recently widowed. He's retired and he's a widower. That's what happens when you're.
I think so.
Okay. So he's retired and he has a huge yard and a big house.
Right.
And he's like, I don't need all this. I don't want to take care of all this. I want something smaller. And so that was a good option for him. And, also tiny houses are very popular.
They are.
People are wanting to simplify.
There's some communities up in Austin and San Antonio that are just strictly tiny homes. And it's neat to see, and they're really well laid out, well done. They have these communities have a lot of amenities, which is neat. I'm happy to see that culture, like that smaller culture of, okay, houses have gotten expensive. All right, well, how do we still get into a house? How do we still build equity? How do we still do? Oh, we just have to buy smaller,
right?
Or on the other side of it, the boomers. Oh, my kids are grown.
I got this big.
I've got a 2-story house, and my knees won't even allow me to go up the stairs anymore. Well, let's dial back. And let's sell this, buy somebody in cash, and now I've got retirement funds to go play with because of the equity in the house that I have,
and I have less to maintain,
and it's more so that aspect. I'm really excited to see. I think that's a movement that I think we're going to see more and more of, and I'm really excited to see more affordable, nice, safe homes being built.
And that's the fun part about the real estate business. It's always changing.
It's always changing. You can't, us as humans, we're always moving, and it's impossible to predict how we're going to move or how we're going to adjust to situations.
And
right?
each generation is different, like we've just established.
Yep, 100%. So.
Well, thank you for coming today and talking to me about this. I think it's an interesting topic, and I'm glad we were able to. Thank you for your research. You did a lot of research on this. Thank you.
It was fun. I enjoy it. That's something I love. I like to mansplain things. So the more I know,
the more you can mansplain.
The more I can mansplain, 100%.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming today.
No problem.
The Brazoria County Minute is brought to you by BeRemembered.us. Tell your story. Be remembered.